So they said, I'm having diarrhea. I looked at them. I said, well, I need to prove it. I need you to bend over.
That happened to me, dog.
Oh, really?
Oh, man.
I went into politics not because I wanted to be prime minister. I have no desire. I have a desire to be health minister. The SDP is the only party which is having rallies every night.
Yes, you have been on stage.
Every night. There were 10,000 people at our rally in Sembawang last night.
Do you think politics is dirty business?
Oh, it's definitely a dirty business.
Why?
Actually, to be honest, almost every business is a dirty business.
Oh, yo. What's going on, everyone? Thanks a lot for joining us here on another very special edition of the Rishi Report SG60 podcast series. Typically, this is a show where we turn some headlines into punchlines, where you have broke comedians giving you broken news. I'm very happy to share that we've only got one broke comedian in the studio today because my guest is actually a very decorated infectious diseases specialist and also from the Singapore Democratic Party, Dr. Paul Tambyah. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Great. Hi, Rishi. It's great to be here. I agreed to do this because I'm a fan of your work.
Hey, what?
To be honest. Yeah.
No way. You don't have to say that just because
it's true.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you speak to my parents?
Oh, yeah.
And tell them that I'm not wasting my life as a joker?
Well, you said before this that you do Punjabi weddings, and that's a good thing.
Yes, that's a word from our sponsors. All the young Punjabi couples who've had me host their wedding, this show is brought to you by them. Okay. No, Doc, it is election campaigning season.
Right.
It is in full swing right now. Quick thoughts on how you think it's going. I'm just curious about your energy level, because you've been speaking a lot. You've been doing a lot of interviews. You've been going out there, meeting people, walking the ground. How is it all going?
Yeah, well, it's very tiring, but at the same time, it's energizing. Just meeting people, talking to them. I enjoy doing podcasts. I meet podcasters. It's something new to me. I haven't done that before. In fact, my wife was commenting on that. 2020, we never had this kind of thing. We had a couple of interviews. We had a AMA and things like that. But this is a new field. But, the SDP is the only party which is having rallies every night.
Yes, you have been on stage
every night
regularly.
And tomorrow it's lunchtime and nighttime. So it's really going to be pretty thorough.
Do people, does a sizable crowd show up for the lunchtime rallies as well?
Well, the lunchtime rallies, the last time we had them was in 2015, and there was a massive crowd.
Was there one in the city? In
UOB Plaza.
UOB
That's
Plaza,
correct.
okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I think I saw some videos of that online.
Yeah. Well, that's where I became famous in 2011.
I read about that,
I
I think one of your students put up a video.
That's right, she did. Wow. And those are the early days of Facebook and social media. It really went viral. Yeah.
Do you enjoy campaigning season?
Well, yes, I do. And for many reasons. See, one of the reasons is that we never get a chance to get our message across. And in fact, this is the big thing about the rallies. In 2020, there were no rallies. So we were supposed to do our own online rallies. Online rally, we try our best. It's not the same. You're talking to a camera in a studio, and you get 20,000, 30,000 views. The CNA coverage of our rallies getting 500,000, 600,000 views.
On YouTube, right?
On YouTube, right. Yep. So you're getting a ton of people who are getting a chance to hear from you directly. See? So that's tremendous.
The rallies that you're talking about, right? Is this a part of the job that specifically election season versus, policy making and versus, coming up with ideas for policy for the nation? Is this something that excites you more than the policy work, for example?
No, actually, they go hand in hand. Because if you've been following the rallies, which very few people actually have, at least the details, I've been trying to go through our manifesto.
Yep.
So every night, so the first night I did T, H, R, last night I did I, then tonight will be V. So I'm going down through the manifesto. So the rally is a chance to actually air or to present the results of the policy-making discussions. And this ties in very closely with what I do in my day job. which is you do research, you study patients, or you work with your scientists in the lab, and you spend years and years doing the research, and then finally it works or it doesn't work, and you get a chance to go to a scientific meeting in some fancy conference center, and you present your results.
Okay.
Exactly.
So actually, you're saying that your day job and your political
life in a way.
ambitions or your pursuits, your political pursuits are actually not very different in philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the mode of operation, they are quite similar.
Right.
And this is where I'm kind of privileged. And you know, as a doctor in a public hospital, you also encounter a whole range of people, which many people in our social demographic may not encounter.
Can I ask you a question, Doc? Can I call you Doc? Is that weird?
That's fine.
Because normally,
you know, Doc is supposed to be Cheng Bok though.
Oh, is he? I don't
younger
know.
Doc. It's okay. That's fine.
I call Doc. So because normally when I refer to the Doc as Doc is when I'm trying to get MC from the army. You know what I mean? Like okay. Well, I've completed my national service liabilities.
Good for you.
Yes. Singapore lost one really damn good soldier.
Yeah. You know, I served all the way until 49 years and 9 months.
And then
they had to MR me. Right?
Oh yeah. And then I'm sure you met a lot of chowking soldiers in your time, right?
Yeah, plenty. But you know, I learned very early on about how that works.
How? Tell me.
No, so I was a battalion MO the year after I ORD'd, because I was in HQ during my NS.
Where did you serve? Are you able to share unit?
Yeah. No, I was in HQ Medical Services.
Okay.
Then after that in reservists, I was in 188. I can't remember. Was it 188? It was one of the 18 series battalions. And then I went overseas to do my training at the University of Wisconsin, where the Prime Minister had done his undergrad. Anyway, you know what happens in a unit is when there's a new MO, at that time we still had cooks. You know,
like servicemen who would cook lah.
Yeah,
It wasn't outsourced.
Their vocation was cooks. It wasn't outsourced to SFI like it is now. You see, and generally the cooks are the so-called gangster types in the unit. You see, so they try and test you out. And the senior MO told me that. He said, he says the cooks will come and try and test you out. And true enough, the first day I ran sick parade, a whole bunch and it was before field camp in Tekong. So a whole bunch of them came and tested me out. So they said, I'm having diarrhea. I looked at them. They didn't look very dehydrated. The heart rate seemed to be okay. You know, it's one of those things you can never prove. So I said, and I learned this from my senior MO. So I said, well, I need to prove it. So I need you to bend over. And I started
that happened to me, dog.
Oh, really?
Oh, man.
The guy
I was
thinks you're a
hoping it didn't go there. Yes. Oh, man.
So after the first two guys got explored, that was it. Nobody else reported sick.
Oh, man. That is
Oops, I've revealed one of the secrets of being an MO.
That's an exploration that I dreaded, man. Oh, okay. But see, now the secret is out.
Yes.
Don't anyhow. The doctor will try to get to know you much better than you want. So, tell me something, Doc. President of the Asia Pacific Society of Clinical Microbiology and Infection. Did we get that right?
Yeah, I'm actually immediate past president of both societies.
Immediate past president of also International Society of Infectious Diseases.
Right.
Why did the government not snap you up? You're such a valuable asset, right? Based on all these credentials.
Yeah, but they don't often snap up the guy who's right at the top. Because very often, to get to the top, especially in an international society, you have to be somewhat critical.
Right.
So, I mean, they've got the chief of staff of the armed forces. They did have a chief of defense force, and he's in all kinds of trouble right now. Jalan Kayu. Right? So I think sometimes in Singapore, the number 2 guy is more attractive to the ruling. I may be wrong, but it looks like the number 2 guy, the guy who is super credentialed, but didn't make it to the top because he doesn't want to ask too many questions. He just wants to get up and use his talents and skills, but doesn't want to rock the boat. Again, this may be a caricature, but that's kind of the way we see the PAP candidates. Is very skillful, very talented, very highly qualified, but don't want to rock the boat kind of characters.
Interesting. Do you, if you were offered, would you have taken up the opportunity?
Oh, definitely not. Yeah. And I think the reason why is that it's too big an organization. See, I have no illusions. There's no way a one individual. I even made a video about it. I said, how can a sampan, change the course of a big ship like the Titanic?
you've made, I think in your first rally speech this year, just to bring it back to that, you made a football analogy.
Yes.
I'm a football fan,
Right.
so before we move further, I don't know if you've revealed publicly or does that affect your street cred?
Yeah.
Who is your team or what is your team?
Yeah. So yesterday somebody asked me the exact same question.
Oh boy.
And I said, I grew up in the 1960s and 70s. And that time there was a really great Leeds United team with Don Revie was the manager and Billy Bremner and what's his name, Peter Lorimer and Norman Hunter. And they were hardworking. They were not very brilliant, but they worked really hard and they did well. Then in the 1990s, they had a racist incident. And so I stopped supporting Leeds. I switched over to one of the teams in red.
Okay,
And
please
I've
tell
been
me.
advised that politically I should not, because otherwise I'll alienate half of the population.
What? No, okay. This is a non-partisan show.
Hey, we're both wearing red, okay? So it
Listen,
doesn't matter.
Based on what based on the vibe that I get from Dr. Paul Tambyah, I think I know his team.
Okay, they're not doing that well right now.
Oh no, I got that so wrong. I was going to congratulate you that
No.
Oh man.
Well, it's one of the teams with 20 EPL titles. Or, First Division or EPL titles.
Okay, let's leave it there. I think this discussion is more divisive than the political discussion.
I totally agree with you.
I'm going to very quickly get into a quick activity. So what I do with my guests on the show is that I like to show them images or some headlines sometimes from the news.
Right.
And I'm going to show you the image of a leader,
Okay,
a political leader.
right.
I'm guessing you might know this person.
Okay.
And you must give me the first word
Okay.
that comes to mind when you see this person.
Okay.
Ready, Doc?
Sure.
Okay. Part of the improv activities we do
Okay,
on the
sure.
Rishi Report.
Yeah.
Can we show the image, please? Very easy
Okay,
one.
that's easy.
Just verbalize who this is for our audio
so
audience.
this image of Chee Juan.
Okay, good. This gentleman you've known for a long time.
That's right.
You've been working with for a long
Yes,
time.
very closely.
First word that comes to mind.
Fighter.
Fighter.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing. Very good. Tell me about your run in with Dr. Chee when you started this journey.
Yeah,
with SDP.
so I think I've talked about this before. For many years, I kind of used to attend these forums that were organized by political parties, by Workers' Party, by Singapore Democratic Party. And in fact, one of them was this screening of One Nation Under Lee, which was actually a banned film. And this was around 2007 or 2008, I can't remember, somewhere around the early 2000s. And I remember that, the police had come in and they came in the front door. I ran out through the back door.
Oh, you ran away?
Yeah, I seriously ran away.
How old were you?
No, I was already in my 40s at that time. But I was just scared, you see, because everybody, and my mom had said, be careful about these guys. And, they that time SDP was still doing a lot of civil disobedience. So I didn't really want to get involved. But then later on, I decided, heck, there was a reason to think about it. And so I started volunteering. And actually what had happened was I had gotten involved with Marua, which is a Singapore human rights organization. It was led by Brema Madi and Nyam Shitung. And it was a good experience. And they are very cautious, but they negotiate the boundaries, see, with the government. And so you learn a little bit about, what are the OB markers and how to sort of negunegotiate and handle things.
Go into that a bit, Doc. When you say negotiating the boundaries with the government, what does that entail?
Yeah, so, I'll give you an example. So Singapore is a signatory to the UN Charter, right? So what that means is every 3 years or every 5 years, we have to submit a report card to the UN Human Rights Commission, which is a kind of a strange organization because it's got some really repressive regimes in there. But anyway, we still submit the report card. But the UN requires the government to submit a report and civil society organizations to submit a parallel report.
Okay.
And the Singapore government is very smart. See, so what happens is MFA will invite the civil society organizations that they know are going to submit the report to a tea session.
Okay.
And it's held at MFA and they treat us with very nice tea. And then they're trying to find out what we are going to say.
This is when you were volunteering with Marua.
Correct, that's right.
And you experienced this when you were there?
Experienced this, yeah.
Okay.
Brema brought me along for a couple of these sessions. And she is very good because she's trying to find out what the government is trying to say so that you can prepare your report, because you submit the report and you have a very short time to answer questions. You go to Geneva and you submit it, and then, you have to answer questions.
So it's almost as though you are trying to, what is the word? When you say negotiate the boundaries, you're essentially trying to work together to come to some acceptable middle ground with that?
No, not really, because we know that, what we want, the government is not going to accept. But you're trying to chip away, and see how far you can push.
I see.
The government, on the other hand, knows that, they have their line in the sand. And they just want to make it clear, but at the same time, they want to know whether they can move it a little bit. You see, there's all these slippery slope arguments and things like that. They think that, if they allow people to deliver a letter to the president, the next thing you know, the president will spend all his time answering letters from activists or, something like that. I have no idea. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Well, if I can share an example of the comedy community in Singapore.
Right.
Okay. So we have similar discussions with the IMDA.
Yes.
And that has been going on ever since I started my career.
Right.
And one of the things that has been heartening is that sometimes, we will take a discussion in, and sometimes you lose the battle as to why this joke cannot be passed on national TV. But sometimes when you're dealing with people, you manage to convince them.
Yeah.
And I think being in the comedy scene in Singapore, it is literally about explaining to them that, if we are performing in a comedy club, which is at this end of the spectrum, and then you're performing on live free-to-air TV, which is on this end of the spectrum, there's
a difference.
Yeah, there's a difference, and we kind of explain that, we know that we can't go to that extent of content on this spectrum, but in the comedy clubs is okay because someone has paid money to come and experience something. And to be fair, there have been IMDA officers I've worked with which have been very helpful, and they have been very forthcoming, and they have literally after some discussion kind of put away the SOP and have a human discussion with us. So I think there are people who have been...
I have no doubt about it. And we've seen this a lot. I mean, even in my professional field, see, in infectious disease, we're big advocates for, like, I'm a board member of Action for AIDS.
Right.
So Professor Roy Chan has been the head of the organization for 40 years. And it's amazing how far we've gone. There was a period of time where the spouses of HIV patients were deported, where, all kinds of things that you had to be buried immediately in a sealed coffin, and you couldn't be allowed to have a wake, and all kinds of things. As the science has advanced, the government has kind of responded, but it's had to be pushed at every step of the way. And this is the role of the advocates. To those who are experts in the field, they bring the science to the authorities. And as you said, there are many people in the ministries and the agencies who are very responsive.
Yeah.
There are some who don't want to do anything. And they don't want to do anything not because they're lazy, but because they're afraid of doing the wrong thing. Because they're afraid that they're the one who allowed this and then something bad happened. See? So there's this whole thing about precedence. If you have done something and nothing bad has happened, then it becomes easier to do it the next time.
You don't want to be the first person who ruins the system.
Singapore.
Okay, I can feel you. I'll bring you back to that football analogy in case there were some people who didn't get a chance to catch your rally. Are you able to paraphrase it? I'm sure you remember your rally speeches by heart, right? Give me a TLDR, so to speak, of those quotes that you made in your first rally in GE 2025.
Yeah, so the Prime Minister had said that we want a good team to take Singapore through troubled times. So my point that I made was you get a good team by playing against teams which are better than you. Every time we want to have a really good, say, Singapore team, I mean, you don't go and play against Laos and Timor-Leste. You see, you play against Thailand, you play against Vietnam, you play against the regional powerhouses, and that way your team gets better. See, so you test yourself.
Yep.
So I said, you don't get to be a good team by playing on a sloping playing field, by shifting the goalpost, by, committing professional fouls, by doing all those kind of things that, we think the PAP is doing with the election.
You are feeling that there are some challenges with the current system of governance. That's why you feel like you can't feel the best team if you do all those things.
And in fact, this is one of the things, again, in my professional field, see, I always feel that there's no point. In fact, when I came back from the States, my dad warned me. He says, it's very easy to be a big fish in a small pond. He says your work must be good enough that it can be accepted in Europe and North America and Japan. Just because you're the Singapore expert in something or other, that doesn't cut it. See, and it's not because Singapore is not a good place to be, but it's so easy to be the Singapore expert if there are only like 30 or 40 people who are studying this particular thing. You want to see whether your work can make it in a field where there are 10,000 people studying it, and if they still respect you and they still ask for your opinion. I'll give you an example. Okay. Yep. So I got involved in a WHO committee on antibiotics. And then we're all sitting there trying to come up with a WHO recommendation for antibiotics. And we're just talking, arguing. Then all of a sudden it came to urine infections, which is actually my field.
Oh, okay.
And then...
Why are you so shy about it?
No, people get embarrassed. My sister is embarrassed. Every time I Google your name, I see urine infections.
Urine infection. That's my field.
It's a big thing.
It's an important job. Yes.
I know,
How can you see?
You're allowed to say this. You're not allowed to say that.
No, my
Seriously?
producer is saying off air that I got urine infection. What nonsense! Ayyo.
Anyway, coming back to this, so
Now, I hope you're not going to ask for some remedy from the doctor.
Oh, there are plenty of remedies.
Sorry, doc. That's a different show. I'm not going to let my team strong arm you into giving free medical advice. Not on the Rishi report. Okay.
Anyway, to come back to my
please.
story.
Carry on.
So I'm sitting there discussing this. Then, like I said, for every other infection, we just argue back and forth. Then suddenly we came to urine infections, they kept quiet. And then they asked me what I thought.
Oh.
And then I thought, okay, now I realize, because there's a temptation to try and be an expert on everything. But if you want to be really good, you have to be, really specialized in one particular thing.
So wow. You need to be the master of one.
Yeah, it's very true. And in fact, this is why I tell some of the young researchers. There's a guy I know. He's really good. He's an eye surgeon, but he's like the world's expert on the tear duct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. People say, what's the big deal about tear duct? I say, the tear duct is a very small and narrow thing. And people who have tear duct problems, they can't, their eyes are constantly wet and things like that. And they go and look for him. And he solves their problems.
It's a super niche.
It's a super niche. That's right. But, that's the way in a small place you get to be internationally known and recognized.
Who is, apart from all your credentials and your expertise and your political philosophies and your political inclinations over the years, who is Paul as a person? Yeah, well,
we're all different. We've got many facets to ourselves. We have different vocations, different callings. So for 3 years up to September 2023, I was son to my mother. And I was like the main kind of caregiver. I had a huge army of people helping me out. We had nurses, we had a cook, we had a cleaner. We were very fortunate in that we had that. But I'm the one they would call.
In Singapore.
In Singapore, yeah. I didn't live with her. I lived 5 minutes away, and I used to go there every night for dinner because she has a really good cook. Yeah, and
she has or she is?
She had. Okay, my mom passed away. Yeah.
Okay.
But we actually took over the cook. So we have a tingkat service. In fact, I just texted her what we want to have.
You're talking about your mom's cook.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, she used to come every day to my mom's place. But what we do is we send a tingkat twice a week to her place, and she fills it up. So she does the best biryani in Singapore. Okay.
I'm so heartwarmed by your excitement about your mom's cook. This is how
her name is Aisha, by the way.
Aisha. Shout out to Aisha, Dr. Paul Tambyah's cook, who used to cook for his mom.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of good memories. It sounds like. Okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
So, son, I'm active in my church. I like reading, although that's something I do on my own.
Do you make time, or are you able to make time for friends and social pursuits and all that?
Yeah, I do. And one of the things I do, again, this is something I've shared with some of my younger colleagues, is I compartmentalize my life, you see. So every Monday I have lunch with my wife. Every Tuesday is my politics day for the last 5 years. Of course, during elections, it's every day. But, people say they want to meet me or someone in Bukit Panjang. I do house visits once every 2 to 3 weeks.
Can I interrupt by asking, you do house visits even when you are not the elected MP.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. And you have to do that.
Continue walking the ground.
You continue walking the ground. See, we've done that for the last 5 years, which is why I'm so relieved that Bukit Panjang has stayed the same, and which is why Sunjan is so upset that Bukit Batok is gone, because for the last 10 years, he's been doing house visits on a regular basis. I mean, I don't know what's his day, but my day has been Tuesday. And so we do house visits, we do festivals. We've done this, they call it APA, Ask Paul Anything, like an AMA kind of thing. If somebody wants to meet me, then my team knows Tuesday. Okay, so we set up a Tuesday to meet.
So that's the compartmentalization.
Yeah, and then Wednesday is my International Society of ID Day until I step down. Then Thursday I run my clinic. Friday I meet my wife's family, and so it's all compartmentalized into, and that helps me to keep myself organized. It helps other people as well, because they know when they can look for me. And
it's very difficult to do, man, Doc. It sounds like
it's difficult to do, but I'm kind of senior enough so I can, and people don't mind waiting for a week, you see. So if they call me on say a Wednesday and they say, oh, I want to see you because my neighbor upstairs, this is one, smoking nonstop, and, I've complained to the MP and the town council and they don't want to do anything. Then I say, do you mind waiting until next Tuesday? They say, sure, I've been waiting for 2 years for something to happen. Yeah.
Okay. Take me back to your story about that first time when you were in your 40s and you ran away because the cops came. Yeah. You were mentioning your first brush with, you were leading up to your first interaction with Dr. Chee, I think.
Right, that's right. Because, well, the film was about him. Right. And I mean, at that time, I saw him from a distance. And that film, I think it's still banned. Yeah. Although there's the other film, Speakers Cornered, which they recently showed at the projector, which is also about him, and it's about the protest that they had, which eventually led to the setting up of Speakers Corner in Hong Lim Park. So, what was clear is that he was someone who was kind of fearless. At least he projected this image of being fearless and also very principled. He was fearless because he believed in certain things. I mean, some people say he's stubborn, and that is actually true. Yeah, but it's two sides of the same coin.
Was there a moment where you made that choice to A, get into politics, and B, choose to be a part of the Singapore Democratic Party in your political journey?
Well, I don't think there was one moment. I kind of drifted into it. Activism and getting involved with people who, like Brema, who are, and I got to know people like Constance Singham, and these are Singapore's pioneering, or rather leading activists, and Peter Low also, the lawyer. So that was a good chance to learn the ropes and to realize that, in Singapore, dissent is not so scary. You see, there are ways and means of doing it. And, everyone gets this paranoia in Singapore. Today's Straits Times, there was a story of a lady who went to our rally, and she gave an interview to the journalists, and she said her father, who works in the civil service, told her not to give her name. I said, that's crazy. I'm actually going to bring it up at one of the rallies. Because, I mean, she's just attending a rally. Come on. There were 10,000 people at our rally in Sembawang last night.
Is this a generational thing, you feel?
I think it is. So the older generation, they're the generation when we had Operation Cold Store and Operation Spectrum. So they're really afraid. They're afraid that they could get a knock on the door at 3 a.m. because that actually did happen to a number of people who are their contemporaries. Whereas the younger generation hasn't actually seen that.
I have experienced a lot of young people right now who are actually going to multiple rallies.
Right.
I myself have attended a few in this time. Given the work that I do, given the understanding that I'm trying to gain of the current political climate. Right. And I've seen young people at various
there
rallies.
are a lot of young people. I mean, the core constituency of the opposition is the old uncle, who is really pissed off because he's been retrenched and, there's no benefits, and he hangs around with his friends. He's forced to drive a taxi. He used to run a company, or he used to be a manager in a factory that has moved out of Singapore. So that is essentially the core constituency of most of the alternative parties. Yeah. But we, as you correctly pointed out, we saw families with children, young children, babies, all this kind of thing. And that's very encouraging.
I think it's part of the democratic process, right? Right. Because if you are going to make an informed choice, You need to go out there and understand what the options are that are available, and a rally is a good way to understand.
And also a rally is a chance to see someone up close, up front and close. And after the rally, people hang around. Yesterday, I went from the speakers area because my wife was helping out with the merchandise sales.
I see.
So I went to the back to try and find her, and I got waylaid by so many people. They wanted to take photographs or they wanted to ask questions. And the questions they asked were extremely interesting and relevant, to what was going on. In the end, it took an hour, and she had already left and got back to the car, and she said, "Where are you?" This is last night. Yeah,
being the spouse of a politician in Singapore. How does that factor into her life? Does she complain about it, or does she get it? Is she on the same
No, I mean, I
path?
think she gets it. She appreciates the fact that, for the last 5 years, it's only been Tuesday night that I'm going to be out in the Bukit Panjang.
Okay.
So the rest of the time, we and then, Monday is the day that I have lunch with her, regardless of what it is. So today, is going to be an exception. She's actually helping us with a mailer that we're doing. She's got a whole family to. So I'm not having lunch with her.
Oh, today is Monday.
Yes.
Sorry, ma'am.
Yes. No worries. It's election season. Yeah.
Did you just set me up to get?
No,
to get the missus a bit upset with this comedian joker disturbing her lunch?
We've cleared it all.
You know what? Hold that thought, Doc. We're going to take a short breather with some messages from our sponsors, and we'll be back after these ads. Actually, there's no ads. What am I saying? It's just a clip of me doing stand-up comedy. Nobody is giving me cash. I wish. This show is sponsored by all the weddings and D&Ds that I've been doing over the past decade. So enjoy this next clip.
The past 2 injuries I've had in my 30s were doing absolutely nothing. The first injury I had was while sleeping. And because I'm a true blue Singaporean, when I got injured while sleeping, the first thing I did was I called my insurance agent. I said, "Bro, can claim or not?" He said, "What happened? Accident?" I said, "Yeah, accidentally slept wrongly, can or not?" So this year, I started playing football. And when you play sports in your 30s, you must remember one thing, okay? Your brain, your heart, and your body are on 3 different pages. Forget pages, they are on 3 different planets, bro. We were a bunch of 30 plus, 40 plus uncles, and one of the opposing members' teams decides to bring his 20-something-year-old Japanese friend who's playing in some C division in Japan. I said, "Bro, we're all trying not to have a fucking heart attack here. Why are you bringing people in their prime?" He said, "I don't know, he just wanted to kick around." And I end up marking this Japanese fella. And I couldn't even hate the guy because every time he would tackle me or beat me, right, he would apologize because he's so polite. He's like, "Sorry, bro, sorry." And I still remember that moment, that fateful moment, right? I saw the football there, 60th minute of the game. It was between me and this Japanese guy. My heart said, "Bro, you can do this, bro. Just go in for the tackle. Show the Japanese is no longer their occupation. Show them we are no longer Shonanto, we are Singapore." And my body is like, "Bro, cannot." Don't bother. And my heart is like, "Why cannot? I play football in the blocks of Bedok South. We can do this." My body is like, "Cannot means cannot, bro. You know cannot. I also know cannot. Don't bother embarrassing yourself." While my heart and my body was having this argument, my brain had already made up its mind. And you know what my brain said? "Bro, just go. Anything happen, Tachut can claim insurance."
Your foray into politics.
Right.
And how did the Singapore Democratic Party fit into that? Or how did you fit into that picture?
Yeah, well, again, I went into politics not because I wanted to be prime minister. I have no desire to be prime minister. I have a desire to be health minister.
You sound like someone we know from a couple of years ago to say these exact words. Have you all shared notes?
Yeah, no, we don't. But, I went into politics mainly because I wanted to change things. Because I felt that, and again, I've talked about this, see, it's closely tied in with the work that I do and my encounters with society and with people around me. And I've mentioned this before, that in medicine, we've become more and more to realize that there's social determinants of health, which are actually more important than the medications and vaccines and stuff like that. And people get sick for a reason. like the COVID pandemic, right? The biggest outbreak was in the migrant worker dormitories. And before that, I'd never been inside a dormitory. But when the pandemic struck, I went into the dormitory and it was a shocking experience. I couldn't believe I was in Singapore. I was in a room this size and there were like 20 people living there. And it was so dark and air was so terrible and, it was poorly ventilated. And it's no surprise that these people all got infected. So you have to change structures if you want to really make a difference.
Yeah. If on 3rd of May,
right,
things move in the direction that I'm guessing you hope, right? That that your residents at Bukit Panjang give you the mandate. What will some of the things be that you champion for in Parliament?
Well, definitely healthcare. Because Singapore has all the ingredients to have the best healthcare system in the world. And I think it's just the political constraints which prevent that from happening. So to really make a change, there's a paucity of data. That's one of the reasons. So my mom always used to say, why do you want to get into politics? You can do a lot of charity and do good and things like that. But I said, you really need to know what's going on. And when you ask a parliamentary question, they're kind of forced to give you the answer. So
on record.
On record, that's right. And that is very important because you can't take action unless you know what is going on. And your information is very limited. It's from what you can get, what you can gather. I've always, a lot of academics complain about the lack of publicly available information in Singapore. And I've said, well, then you go and collect it yourself. And as an academic, if you have a research grant, you have a research team, you can do that. In politics, we can't. You just don't have that kind of resources to try and collect that yourself.
When you say in politics, you mean in opposition politics?
Of course. In ruling party politics, you have unlimited resources.
Because the civil service reports to the government of the day, right?
Correct.
So you have that
true.
resource.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Fair. There has been some discussion about foreign interference.
Right.
I think PM Wong came out and hey, he said, look, I'm taking off my party hat. I'm speaking as the Prime Minister right now.
Acting Prime Minister.
Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Foreign interference in domestic politics.
Right.
Take us through your thoughts on that.
Yeah, foreign interference in domestic politics is a bad thing. And it's partly because there are certain malign influences that are associated with foreign interference. And we only have to look at the United States and you see what's happening. There's a lot of people who sincerely believe that the president is a Russian agent.
So since 2015, since 2016, there's been this belief.
Yeah. He's supposedly got a code name Krasnov or something. So that's really the worst thing in the world to happen. That Singapore politicians become agents of some kind of foreign power.
Do you think we are, in any danger of that happening?
I don't think so. And part of the reason is because for all the restrictions that we have on politics, we have a very lively social media sphere. So anyone who tries to lean towards one particular power or another is going to get called out. But I've been trying to excite a history student to apply for a heritage grant to study Singapore's tradition of being a focus of foreign interference for good in the Southeast Asian region. Because if you go to the Empress Place area, you'll see there's a marker for Ho Chi Minh.
Okay.
Because Ho Chi Minh lived in Singapore and he developed his revolutionary work in Singapore.
Wow.
There's a marker for Jose Rizal because Jose Rizal lived in Singapore. And he developed his revolutionary work, a lot of his revolutionary work in Singapore. The Sun Yat-sen Villa is one of 2 private homes which have been conserved because that's a place where Sun Yat-sen plotted the downfall of the Qing dynasty and the end of 5,000 years of imperial rule in China. So all of that foreign interference started in Singapore for the good of China, Vietnam, Philippines. So I think, and so I've been talking to various friends who are history professors. Hey, you got a graduate student, we apply for $150,000 grant. We can write a book, we can do a tour of all the sites where foreign and Indian National Army, Farrer Park. That was a lot of people believe that the British left India not because of Gandhi and Nehru, but because of Subhash Chandra Bose, and they realized that it would cost them too much to try and stay in India. So India, China, Vietnam, Philippines, even Indonesia, a lot of the revolutionary work happened in Singapore. So while foreign interference in Singapore politics is bad, historically, Singapore has done a lot of good by being a focus for foreign interference in countries in the region and the neighborhood.
Focus for foreign interference, that means like a focal point.
Singapore was the major trading hub. And we had the only university essentially in Malaya. And so we had the academics, we had the resources.
This was almost like a safe space for them.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like if you watch the movie Casablanca. Look at you, I think you must have watched the movie Casablanca.
Why you look at me? It looks like I would have watched Casablanca. What is it about my face, Doc?
I have no idea. But it's the place where people would come and go, and you could get a flight. At that time it was a boat.
It was a hub.
It was a hub
where people were connecting and exchanging ideas.
Yes. And it was also a place where there was money. So Sun Yat-sen was here because the local businessmen, Nee Soon and all these other people had raised the funds, the OCBC people, and to help fund the work that was going on in China.
Hub for foreign interference,
right?
Historically,
that's right.
But definitely not something that
we want now, right. Exactly. Because again, that was an era of colonialism, and colonialism needed to be overthrown. You see, so that's why you needed to have the Rizals and the Ho Chi Minhs in Singapore plotting to overthrow the unjust colonial regime. But right now we've got, domestic regimes, and then you've got the neocolonialism. You've got these great powers trying to influence other countries, and that's something we definitely do not want.
So you are definitely, I think Dr. Chee has come out and agreed with PM Wong.
Yeah, sure.
Even leader of opposition, Pritam Singh, has come out and agreed very emphatically.
Well, I gave a speech a couple of days ago where I pointed out that, there's a certain Polish guy who keeps writing in Singapore, which I think is potentially kind of dangerous foreign interference too.
Did he get blocked yet? No.
Haven't. He gets endorsed by a certain very highly influential person.
Oh, really? Yeah? Alamak, must go and find her.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, as long as the needful are blocked, apparently the videos and all that.
Yeah.
I couldn't even get access to it by the time the news broke out.
Right.
Yeah. The next thing I would just like to get your thoughts on is politics as a field, as a business.
Right.
Do you think politics is dirty business?
Oh, it's definitely a dirty business.
Why?
Actually, to be honest, almost every business is a dirty business. Even the pharmaceutical industry is a dirty business. And this is one of the things a lot of people come and talk to me about after rallies. They say, I took this drug and, it gave me all these side effects and I went to see this guy and blah, blah, blah. And the history of the industry is not great. Because there are a lot of products which get marketed, which may not be that useful. A lot of products which are useful, which never see the light of day because they may not make money for the company that makes them. So it's the same with politics. There's some really, really good books on political science, which I've started reading in the last few years. One of them is called The Dictator's Handbook.
Okay.
It's by this guy, I can't remember his name. He's a very, very famous political science professor.
Okay.
And he explains, how economics drives politics. And how, like, for example, in North Korea, or the DPRK, it's not falling apart. Part of the reason is they have nuclear weapons, so nobody's going to invade them. The other part of the reason is, and I read a book by a defector, it's called The Aquariums of Pyongyang, and he pointed out that about a third of the population is very well taken care of. So this is the military, the Communist Party, they're very well taken care of. You know, if you watch K-dramas, there's this Crash Landing on You, where they talk about the life of the, you know, the elite in North Korea, and they get access to designer goods and all this kind of thing. And then there's a third of the population who are really suffering. These are the rural poor, the dissidents. But he says the other third of the population in the middle is aspiring to be in the top third. So they don't want to rock the boat. And they don't want to end up like the bottom third. So you've got about 60% of the population who are supporting the status quo.
Wow.
And you, of course, have a ruthless military and secret service. But, you know, he says he thinks that they will last for a very long time. I personally don't think so. DPRK. But
right.
of course, DPRK, the difference is that there is the ROK, the South Koreans. And there's so many people who still have family members on the other side of the border. So I think that's going to bring down the regime.
Do you think, to bring it back to elections coming up this year, do you feel like this will be the year for SDP to have some kind of representation in Parliament? After a long time, it's been since 97.
Correct.
Why do you think there's been no representation? Despite the fact that I understand that SDP has, you know, a suite of policies, you've been making recommendations about policies as well. Why is there no representation for such a long time, you think?
Well, you know, during the 1990s, before I got involved with the party, in fact, I was overseas at the time, there was this really messy falling out. And, you know, Dr. Chee gets blamed for it, but I think he was just, you know, caught up in the whole thing. And in fact, this guy, Lok Ho Young, he's written a book, a very, very good book. He's a political scientist, and he's, I think it was called The First Wave, about opposition politics in Singapore, where he talks about Workers' Party, and he explains in detail from interviews, he's an academic, so he's got very good primary sources, where he points out that what happened was actually it was the influx of a number of people from the Workers' Party into the Singapore Democratic Party, which Mr. Cham had trouble dealing with. And then there was all kinds of disputes which happened, and that ended up tearing up the party. And so they took a really long time to recover from that. But once they were ready to recover, you know, the SDP actually, unfortunately, has a target on our back because we are quite clearly defined ideologically. And, you know, that makes it, in a way, dangerous to the PAP.
Define that ideology for us.
Left of center.
Okay.
See, so social democratic, similar to the Nordic countries, where you have universal access to healthcare, housing, education, all this kind of thing that used to be derided or is still derided in sort of right-wing circles.
What would your message be then to young voters, perhaps who are going to the polls for the first time these elections?
Yeah, I think that, you know, the Prime Minister keeps talking about not taking a risk. But frankly, you know, not doing anything is also taking a risk. So I would argue that if you really want to change things, you need to take a small risk. And that risk is probably less than just continuing with the status quo. Because for a young person, there are huge challenges. You know, I look at my students, I talk to them. I tell them that, you know, a year after my ORD, on a MO salary, and my wife was a tutor in the university, we managed to buy a 1,600 square foot apartment in District 10, which was freehold for $460,000. And they look at me as though I was from another planet. You know?
How?
There's no way they can do that. You know? That same apartment has gone up tenfold. The salary of an MO has doubled. But if the price of the apartment has gone up tenfold, then essentially they're facing a much lower quality of life than we had 30 years ago. And that's what their parents had. So we're looking at a generation, and this is not unique to Singapore. It's also true, interestingly enough, in UK and US, which have moved with the Thatcher and Reagan revolutions more rightward. But it's not true in Scandinavia. See, in the Nordic countries in Scandinavia, young people can expect to live a similar kind of lifestyle, if not better than their parents. And that's because of the safety net that's put in. See, someone said, you know, Finland had a unique solution to the homeless problem. What do? They build homes. It's not like in San Francisco, they try and lock them up and put them in jail and this kind of thing. But the approach of the Scandinavians is, look, housing is a right. You don't have a home, we build you a home. So I think that's the kind of message we're trying to give to the younger voters, is that don't take the risk of continuing with the status quo. It's time to make a change. And these things, everyone says, oh, who's going to pay for it? It pays for itself. A lot of it pays for itself. We're talking about entrepreneurs. Why does Singapore have such a few entrepreneurs? And one reason is because they've sunk so much of their money into their flats or their apartments. So they're so afraid if they fail. I think Alec Talk mentioned that in one of the early rally speeches. So the price of failure in Singapore is so high that people are just not willing to do that.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Doc. Really appreciate that. We're going to wrap things up here.
Thank you.
I have one final question for you.
Sure.
Which I'm hoping you will share with us. Again, in the interest of young people who are watching, to understand a little bit about the entrance into politics.
Right.
You are a veteran.
Yeah. Sort of. Yeah.
It's quite long, right? You've been involved in
about
activism.
15 years, yeah.
Are there some first-time new faces that you've seen this election that have caught your eye? Maybe you can give me one from the ruling party and one from the opposition or independents, or whoever has caught your eye, and why do you feel so?
Okay, well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Soraya. Soraya is our party treasurer, and she's our candidate for Sembawang. And there was a big discussion about whether to field her in Sembawang or Marsiling UT, because she had been active on the ground in Marsiling UT. But, she actually has come on her own. Her speech yesterday was really dynamic. She's a very efficient treasurer. I can tell you try and set up a bank account in Singapore for an opposition party is super difficult.
Oh, really?
It is.
Wow.
Everything else you can do online. But opposition parties, because of all the regulations, it's not the bank that's really trying to be difficult. But there's so many regulations for politically significant person, politically exposed person, FICA, all this, that, and the other. And those, apparently, you have to go. We've given up trying to go to the bank. And finally, the bank, being a bit sympathetic, says, okay, but they still need wedding signatures for various things. So she goes back and forth, and she's managed to get all these things set up just in time for the elections. And of course, we're not a wealthy party, so she's trying to balance out and tell people you can't spend on this or you can't spend on that, and so that's been very impressive. That's the back end. So I'm thinking, if by some miracle they win the Sembawang GRC, she'd be a fantastic person to oversee the town council finances and how that works.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Now, for the ruling party, the person, I was thinking about this, when you mentioned that, and I think the person who I really am most interested in is Hamid Razak. He actually was my student a long time ago, and he was extremely popular as a student.
Okay.
And he went into orthopedic surgery. He was at Sengkang for some time, and now he's in private practice, I see. And just yesterday, I saw that he's being featured as a potential minister, which is interesting because it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. But he's a very smart guy. He's very kind. In fact, I referred my mom's cook to him, and she was so pleased. She said, she's been having this knee problem that's been going on for the longest time, and Hamid, was very patient and kind of explained how it works. So it'd be a pity if he becomes a minister.
It'd be a pity.
Yes, it would. But and he's also a great dancer.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That's another fun fact from Dr. Paul Tambyah. That Hamid Razak, whatever ministry you're going to be fielded in, we know your secrets now. You're a very good dancer.
Yeah.
Did you think that in the history of politics that you've had, in the history of Singapore that you had, that one day you would end up telling us about how your mom's cook features in this political discussion about SDP and PAP and new faces? Was this the elections you imagined?
No, not at all. But one of the things I learned after 2011 is that there's no limit to the number of surprises that an election can bring.
All right, thanks very much, Doc. Really appreciate that. He's absolutely right. No limit to the number of surprises that we have in GE 2025. If Dr. Paul's views resonate with yours, and if this is the voice that you want represented in Parliament, go out there, exercise your right to vote on May the 3rd. We'll be back on our next episode with another guest here on the Rishi Report SG60 podcast series. We'll see you very soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, Doc.
Thanks.